A Better Life After a Change of Life author, loving a single flower introduction. The Zhang family has 2 daughters, each of whom is as beautiful as a flower. Catch up with the famine season, you must sell one to survive. Zhang Yunzu got the shorter branch and was taken away by Ren Yazi. 7 years later, Zhang Yunzu's face was even brighter, she was dressed in rich clothes and surrounded by servants. At this time, she is already the young lady of Anping Mansion, so she is naturally extremely honorable. It turned out that Ren Yazi sold her to the Marquis of Anping that time. But at this time, Zhang Yunxiu's face was full of wind and frost, worrying about firewood and rice every day. After receiving the brocade handed over by her sister, Zhang Yunxiu gritted her teeth and bled, if she was the one who was taken away by human teeth. Back on the day of drawing lots, Zhang Yunxiu took the short branch first. This time, she wanted to be the master. Zhang Yunzu smiled and took the long branch. She thought it was so easy to go from a maid to the young madam of the home mansion. Note: the wealth and honor in the heroine's dream is earned by her own struggle, not by being sold. Don't get sold, live better. Content tags, special liking, a match made in heaven, farming through time and space. Search keywords, protagonist, Zhang Yunzu. Supporting role, others, one sentence introduction, make a fortune and become the governor. Conception, self-reliance, self-improvement, hard work. Brief comment on the work: Zhang Yunzu traveled to ancient times, just in time for a famine, and the family had to sell a daughter to survive. In the dream, Zhang Yunzu was betrayed and suffered a lot, so she didn't want her sister to follow her old path. Unexpectedly, the younger sister only saw her wealth and glory in the end, and took her life away. After changing her life, Zhang Yunzu sold breakfast, made takeout, and opened a restaurant. The days got better and better, and she even opened the restaurant to the capital at the end. At the same time, she also met the man who had been with her for the rest of her life, happy and happy. The heroine of this article has a distinctive personality, is down to earth, starts from the little things, and works step by step. The writing of the article is compact and fascinating. It was the busy autumn season for farmers, but at this time, the people of Qinghe village were all looking at Jiang's house in the north of the village. First, a few slaves on tall horses led the way, and then a carriage came slowly. The carriage is covered with bright jade and covered with bead curtains, and even the horses that pull the carriage are made of gold and silver, which is indescribably luxurious and rich. If you don't know the situation, ask, who is this? The Zhang family still has such relatives. That's the daughter of the Zhang family. She seems to be called Zhang Yunzu. I heard that she was sold out in the early years. I haven't seen her for a few years. Who would have thought that she would become the young wife of the Ho's mansion? She is truly a master, and her wealth is extraordinary. Someone lamented. I don't know whether I am lamenting Zhang Yunzu's fate, or lamenting why I don't have such a good daughter. The carriage stopped at the gate of Jiang's house, and 5 or 6 maids stepped forward immediately, surrounded by a young man and a slim lady, and entered the yard. With a glimpse, everyone saw the appearance of the young man and the beauty. That's the son of the Ho mansion, he looks really handsome. I just look at the girls from the Zhang family. Tisk tisk, she looks like a fairy lady. No wonder she can be the young lady of the Ho mansion. How did the Zhang family give birth to such a daughter? Everyone was envious and jealous, and there were many discussions. In the crowd, Zhang Yunxiu clenched her teeth so hard that she almost bled. She could have owned this carriage, this wealth, and even that handsome man, as long as... Mother, I'm sorry for you, you just choose one, stay or go, it's fate. Chen's tearful eyes stretched out both hands forward. In each of her 2 hands, she holds a dead branch with only a little exposed. The 2 branches are of different lengths. Whoever chooses the long branch will stay, and whoever chooses the short branch will leave with the teeth. Dizzy in front of his eyes, Zhang Yunzu collected himself and saw clearly what was in front of him. 3 mud-told houses and a small courtyard are both real and a little strange. This seems to be the yard she lived in when she first came to this world. What's going on? Isn't she already married and has become the young lady of Anping Haofu? Yunzu, your illness is still not cured, you choose first. Chen said. The Zhang family has two daughters. The eldest daughter, Zhang Yunzu, is 16 years old, and the second daughter, Zhang Yungziu, is 15 years old. The palms and backs of the two daughters are full of flesh, and Chen's pain hurts, but there is no other way now, so he can only sell one. In fact, Mrs. Chen preferred to let Zhang Yunzu stay, because she had just suffered a serious illness a few days ago, and she was so burned out that she would be very difficult to survive if she was sold again. But as soon as she thought of her staying, Zhang Yungziu would have to leave, and Mrs. Chen wished she could take back what she had just said. She couldn't bear to part with any of them. Zhang Yunzu looked at the two branches in Chen's hand, but finally confirmed that this was indeed when she first traveled to this world. She clearly remembered these two branches, the one on the left was short, and the one on the right was long. At that time, she chose the one on the left, and then was sold into the Anping Home Mansion as a maid. It's been 7 years since she went there, and everything is vivid in her mind, but why? She returned to this time again. Huangliang a dream? Zhang Yunzu hesitated. But someone next to him became impatient. Hurry up, what time is it? I'm still waiting to go back. A smeared woman urged Zhang Yunzu first, and then said to Chen, Sister, I told you not to cry too. Yes, 6 taels of silver is really a lot, you can ask around, now 2 taels of silver can buy a big girl. How many people want to sell it but can't sell it? Didn't I see that you two daughters are my favorite, otherwise I can give you such a high price? Speaking of this, the woman rolled her eyes, took Chen's hand and said eagerly, Sister, if you want me to say, why draw a lottery, why don't you sell them both to me, they will follow me, good days are coming. Well, isn't it better than starving and freezing with you? 13 taels, sell them to me together, they will have a way out, and you will have a better life, right? The more the woman talked, the more excited she became. The two daughters of the Zhang family are so lovely. They are 15 or 16 years old, just like the dewdrops on the peach blossoms in the morning. As long as she buys them, she can make a fortune by reselling them. Mrs. Chen quickly shook her head violently. Selling one would be helpless, but selling 2 would be a loss of conscience. The woman's hope was in vain, she cursed secretly in her heart, she was brainless, and only urged, then hurry up, who will sell it to me? Chen Shi looked at Zhang Yunzu and motioned for her to choose. At this time, Zhang Yunzu had come to his senses, no matter if it was a dream or something, life still had to be lived. After hesitating for a moment, she reached out to Chen's left hand. She is not from this world, the original owner is dead, she used his body, so she should give back to her parents. Besides, if everything is really like a dream, she has already experienced it once, and this time it should be easier. Beside him, Zhang Yungziu's complexion changed drastically. Just now, she experienced a change in her life from great sadness to great joy. She couldn't believe it, God really gave her a chance to start again, this time, she would never be a peasant woman in a mountain village. She wants wealth and glory, and she wants rich clothes and fine food. As long as she gets the branch on the left, she will be sold into the Marquis of Anping, and then she will have everything that Zhang Yunzu had before. She has thought about it more than once, and now it is finally coming true. Thinking of this, she took a step ahead of Zhang Yunzu, and grabbed Chen's left hand. Mother, I will choose this branch, she said excitedly. Yungziu. Chen was surprised. She didn't know which branch was longer and which was shorter, but now that Zhang Yunzu was choosing, she had already chosen the branch in her left hand. What would Zhang Yungziu grab? In fact, she didn't have any malicious intentions, but Zhang Yungziu seemed to be stimulated, and suddenly complained loudly, Mother, why did you let my sister choose first, and can't you let me choose first? Yes, Zhang Yongziu resented the Chen family. In the previous life, she stayed by Chen's and Zhang Cheng's side, filial to them, taking care of her younger siblings, and even obeying their advice, and married that worthless Su Qingshan. But what about them? Zhang Yunzu was always on their minds. Thinking about what she was doing, whether she was fed and clothed. In fact, people eat delicious food and drink spicy food every day in Anping Ho's mansion, but they eat bran-swallowed vegetables every day in the village. So what is she, and what is her contribution? And when Zhang Yunzu came back and became a noble lady, she was no longer in their eyes. It's also a daughter, so they treat her like this? This time she must replace Zhang Yunzu and live that kind of rich life. No one can stop her, otherwise she will fight her hard. The more she thought about it, the more Zhang Yunzu felt annoyed. She directly squeezed Chen's hand, and pulled out the branch from her hand. Chen's hand hurt from being pinched, and she looked at Zhang Yongziu in disbelief. Zhang Yongziu didn't care about her, she just looked at the branch in her hand. It was a short branch, it was really a short branch, everything was true, she was going to be the young lady of Hofu. Zhang Yongziu's eyes were red, but she was smiling, looking strangely distorted. Chen only felt that Zhang Yongziu in front of her was very strange, as if she was not her daughter at all. Zhang Yunzu also noticed Zhang Yongziu's abnormality. In everyone's general perception, being sold is tantamount to suffering. The better ones are sold to rich people as maidservants, beaten and scolded at every turn, and their life and death are up to them. The lowly ones, and the unlucky ones, are directly sold into brothels, and their lives will be ruined. In her dream, she was sold to the Marquis of Anping. The bitterness in it was not enough for outsiders to understand. That's why she thought, she'd better choose the short branch. What now? Zhang Yongziu wasn't very afraid of being betrayed before, so why did she suddenly grab the branch in Chen's left hand? I was so happy to find that there were short branches inside. Thinking of the experience in the dream, Zhang Yunzu raised her eyebrows. Zhang Yongziu didn't have a similar dream, did she? She remembered that Zhang Yongziu was very dissatisfied with her in the dream, and she once said in front of her face that if she had been the first to choose at that time, maybe she would be the young lady of the Haofu now. Even, she seems to have seduced Lin Tingan, but at that time her face was full of weather, and her flowering period was long gone. How could Lin Tingan fall in love with her? Interesting, Zhang Yunzu didn't move and continued to watch. Mother, I chose a short branch. At this moment, Zhang Yongziu also calmed down, and said to Chen Shi as if declaring. Yongziu. Chen was very worried about her. Zhang Yunzu, I chose a short branch. Zhang Yongziu said to Zhang Yunzu again. When she said this, she raised her chin slightly, full of ambition, and God favored her. This time it was finally time for her to be beautiful and prosperous, and Zhang Yunzu to roll in the mud. Seeing her like this, Zhang Yunzu finally confirmed her conjecture just now. It seems that she had indeed had a similar dream. Thinking of all kinds of things in the Anping Ho mansion, she smiled. Zhang Yongziu really wants the life in her dream? Then she will give it to her, I only hope that she will not regret it by then. The matter was settled like this, the two parties wrote a contract, delivered the money. Zhang Yongziu packed up his things and left with the woman. Zhang Yongziu didn't bring anything except the clothes on her body. From her point of view, these things in the house have a poor air, and they should not be looked down upon. Before leaving, she said to Zhang Yunzu, Sister, if you can't live on in the future, come and beg me. If she was in a good mood, she might reward her with a few taels of silver, just like the ones she gave her in the past. Like satin. Beg her? The corners of Zhang Yunzu's lips rose. She thought it was so easy for a maid to go to Mrs. Ho's mansion. Besides, why did she ask her? Her good life has just begun. The author has something to say, rewrote the text. Long after Zhang Yongziu left, Mrs. Chen was still standing at the gate, as if she could wait for her to come back this way. Zhang Yunzi knew she was sad and didn't bother her. The sun is slightly slanting, and the autumn sun shines on people, warm. Zhang Yunzi looked up and saw that the sky was high and the clouds were calm, and his heart suddenly widened. This long-lost sense of freedom really made people extremely happy. Yes, Zhang Yunzi doesn't miss the life in the Anping mansion at all, including her husband Lin Ting and who everyone admires. To her, it was like a prison. Originally, she thought about how she would escape if she entered the Ho's mansion again this time, but now it's all right, and it's easy. But right now she also has urgent problems to solve. The past 2 years in Chongfeng Mansion have been severely affected by disasters. Last year, there was a severe drought and the crops failed. This year, it was drought and locust plagues. How serious is the disaster? Summer is when plants are lush, and when you look around, there is no green at all. Chididikunli. The people were displaced, and I don't know how many people died of thirst and starvation. It was also because of this that Zhang Cheng and Chen Shi, a hard-working couple, were forced to sell their daughter to live. Zhang Yunzi thought, this Chongfeng mansion can't stay anymore. 1. The disaster here is too serious. There is an old saying that she would rather be a dog of peace than a person in troubled times. She thinks this is very reasonable. If the society is stable and the people live and work in peace and contentment, that dog may eat meat, just like modern society. Conversely, if the society is in turmoil and the people are poor, no matter how hard a person works, it will be difficult to live the life he wants. So if they want to live a good life, they must first move to a rich place. Another point, she remembered that there would still be a drought in Chongfeng Mansion next year. The Zhang family will go to flee when the mountains and rivers run out next year, so in Mengli, after she has gained a firm foothold in the Anping Marquis Mansion, she wants to contact them, but she can't. That being the case, why not turn passive into active and move in advance? Thinking of this, Zhang Yunzi turned around in the yard. Soon, she discovered that Zhang Cheng, who was squatting with his head buried under the back eaves, was also her father in this body. Afraid of embarrassing Zhang Cheng, Zhang Yunzi backed away, then deliberately stepped up and walked over there. Zhang Cheng heard footsteps, quickly wiped his eyes, and stood up. Father, I know you're sad, but things are already like this, let's think about what to do in the future. Yungziu, I think we will meet again in the future. Zhang Yunzi persuaded, she was telling the truth. Zhang Cheng thought she was comforting him, how could we see her souled daughter again? It's Dad who's sorry for you. Zhang Cheng said, it was him who was useless. Zhang Yunzi didn't want to talk about this topic. In famine years, there are also times when people change their children and eat. Zhang Cheng was silent for a while, thinking that it was time to think about the future. He already lost one daughter, and he didn't want to lose another. Don't worry, with these 6 taels of silver, let's save some money, we should be able to last until next year, and wait until next year's spring. What if there is still a severe drought next year? Zhang Yunzi asked. Zhang Cheng was stunned by the question, and subconsciously wanted to answer how is that possible. But when he thought about the severe drought last year, and the severe drought and locust plague this year, it seems that next year's severe drought is not impossible. Yes, what if there is a severe drought next year? He froze. Zhang Yunzi waited for him to come back to his senses. After a while, Zhang Cheng said, call your mother and Zhang Lin over, let's have a good discussion. The Zhang family not only has 2 daughters, Zhang Yunzi and Zhang Yungziu, but also 2 sons, Zhang Lin, Zhang Yungxiu and Zhang Wu, and a daughter. It's just that they are too young. If you give this kind of age to others for free, no one will want it. Zhang Yunzi nodded, and went to call Chen Shi and others. After a while, the whole family gathered in the house. Zhang Yunzi led Zhang Wu's hand into the house together. Zhang Wu is only 6 years old this year, and he is very cute. Both Zhang Cheng and the Chen family look good. Zhang Cheng has a typical Chinese face, while the Chen family has the gentleness of a Jiangnan water town, and his skin is also fair, so the children of the Zhang family are all very good looking. Zhang Yunzi saw Zhang Wu felt very fond of it. Unfortunately, in the dream, he seemed to have died on the way to escape. That's right, if according to the situation in the dream, the Zhang family had to wait until next year's money was spent before fleeing, Zhang Wu is so young, it's normal that he can't hold on. Fortunately, it should not be now. Zhang Yunzi clenched Zhang Wu's hand, and Zhang Wu was leaning against her leg, blinking his big round eyes very well. He seemed to know that something happened at home, the head of the family. Chen didn't know what happened, and asked Zhang Cheng. Zhang Cheng repeated what Zhang Yunzi said just now, and asked her what she thought. Chen is at a loss. Will there be a severe drought next year? God just doesn't give people a way to survive. But now that it's autumn, there's no sign of rain at all. Maybe it will really happen next year. She didn't dare to think about it before. She always hoped that she would be fine next year, but now someone pointed it out, and she was awakened like a dream. What should I do then? She looked at Zhang Cheng. Zhang Cheng looked at Zhang Yunzi. He felt that after this incident, she seemed to have grown up a lot. Father, Mother, I think we should move, or rather, escape. Zhang Yunzi said surprisingly. Move? Where are you going to move? Chen subconsciously refused. She knew the pain of being displaced. At that time, she and Mr. Chen fled to Jinia village. After finally taking root here, she didn't want to leave here. Zhang Yunzi looked at Zhang Cheng. She felt that he supported her. Yes, Zhang Cheng also understands those truths. A tree is moved to death, and a person is moved to life. He discussed with Chen in a low voice, if there is another drought next year, they will definitely not be able to hold on. Even if there is no drought, their life will certainly not be too easy. It's autumn now, but there is no sign of rain at all. Zhang Cheng feels that there is a high chance of drought next year. The more Chen listened, the redder her eyes became. But she also knew that Zhang Cheng was right. By evening, the Zhang family had reached an agreement that they were going to move. Pack up and pack up, let's go in 2 days. Zhang Cheng said. These 2 days. Zhang Yunzi didn't expect Zhang Cheng to be in such a hurry. Zhang Cheng said, it's already autumn, and it's going to get colder and colder. We'd better find a place to stay before winter begins. Otherwise, if there's no roof to cover them in the cold weather, they'll freeze to death. This is the truth, Zhang Yunzi understands. The Zhang family immediately got busy and prepared to leave Chongfeng Mansion. As for where to go, they wanted to go south. First, there was a lot of rain in the south, and second, the temperature became warmer as they went south. This was the same direction as they fled in the dream. In the same night, Zhang Cheng repaired the cart at home. Mrs. Chen packed up the things at home. Zhang Yunzi helped her. In fact, there is nothing to clean up. In the past 2 years of disasters, the family has sold everything that can be sold, and now there are only some broken tables that no one wants, and there is no way to bring them. Sister, do you want to bring this thing? Zhang Lin asked Zhang Yunzi holding a broken clay pot. No. Zhang Yunzi replied firmly. Zhang Lin turned and ran away. Sister, what about this one? Zhang Yunxiu asked Zhang Yunzi holding a broken bundle. Zhang Yunzi looked at the burden skin, and thought it was too useless as a rag, but now, take it with you, she said. At least it was a piece of cloth, in case it was too cold on the road, you could use it as a cushion to sit on or something. Zhang Yunxiu happily folded the torn burden skin carefully, like a treasure. Even Zhang Wu came to help, and the children were very busy. Chen Shi watched from the side, both relieved and worried. Busy until dark, everyone eats and rests. Early the next morning, Zhang Cheng got up early and went to the town to buy food, preparing to eat on the road. All he bought was sorghum rice. These days, the price of rice has skyrocketed. Wherever poor people can afford rice, they always buy this kind of grain. This kind of grain is rough and difficult to swallow. It used to be used to make wine, but now it is good to eat. Just like that, he bought 50 caddies of sorghum rice, which cost him 500 wen. The price has risen too fast, and he feels more and more that it is a good idea to leave here. The Chen family went to the village to inquire about the situation, to see which way is easier to go, and if they want to leave Chongfeng Mansion, do they need to go to the county government office to guide them. Only after she inquired about it did she know that someone in the village had already fled. Most of them also went south, but the road they took was different. The people in the village don't know which road is good. After all, only those who have walked know it, and those who have walked never come back. As for Liu Yin, someone once asked that the county government would not handle it at all, and even if it was not done well, it would anger the official and the master, and he might be arrested. After all, so many people are going to leave Chongfeng Mansion, and if the higher-ups find out, the official's black hat may not be guaranteed. If you want to leave, you can only go secretly. At noon, the family got together again, talking about what they had gained, and they became more determined to leave here. After eating, Mrs. Chen immediately got busy. She wanted to mix the sorghum rice with rice bran to make pancakes and eat them on the way. Zhang Yunzu took out all the pickles left in the pickle jar, cut them into shreds, and kept them for the road. Her speed was very fast, and within a short while, 6 or 7 pickles turned into thin shreds of pickles. There is still some sesame oil at home, which is reserved for the Chinese New Year, and now it is no longer used, so she poured it all into the pickles. After finishing this, she went to prepare water. Now there is a drought everywhere, and water is a precious thing. There used to be a well in Jiang's yard, but like most of the wells in the village, it has run out of water now. To get water, you can only go to the well at the head of the village, and the well is deep. Zhang Yunzu and Zhang Lin lined up for half an hour, and brought back 2 buckets of water. The water was muddy yellow. Zhang Yunzu frowned, "Can this drink? You can drink it overnight." Seeing it in the kitchen, Mrs. Chen said. As for boiling, they don't even have firewood for cooking, so how to cook it? Burn the tables, benches, and beds at home, or boil the water to drink, otherwise what should I do if I get sick? Zhang Yunzu said. Chen opened her mouth in surprise, burning the table and bed? How could this be possible? But after thinking about it, they were about to leave here, and it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. Zhang Cheng and Mrs. Chen started from scratch, and they saved all the things in the house one by one, such as the bed, which they bought when they got married, and the table, which Zhang Cheng asked someone to open when she gave birth to Zhang Yunzu. Of everything has her memory in it, but now it is about to be burned. Chen remained silent, she knew that this time they were really going to die. She was very scared, but with her family by her side, she didn't seem to be afraid. Even, she has to be strong to protect her child from wind and rain. Zhang Yunzu looked at the 2 buckets of water, but thought of one thing, now they can boil the water to drink, but what about the road? The water could be worse than this, and maybe she should have prepared earlier. After thinking about it, she decided to make a filter to avoid drinking dirty water as much as possible. This filter is very simple, it is made of charcoal, pebbles, gravel, and cotton cloth. Zhang Lin and the others had nothing to do, seeing what she was doing was very interesting, they all surrounded her to watch. Zhang Yunzu asked them to help, those who washed the stones, and those who washed the jars brushed the jars. Soon, a vase-shaped filter was ready. Pour the water from the bucket into the vase. A trickle flows from the bottom of the vase, which is crystal clear. The 3 children were all attracted by this miraculous scene, but Zhang Yunzu had the bottom line in her heart and it was done. The next day, Zhang Yunzu helped Mrs. Chen continue to make sorghum pancakes. 50 caddies of sorghum rice had to be ground into flour and then made into pancakes, which took a lot of time. After discussing with Jiang Cheng, Mrs. Chen went out separately. Jiang Cheng went straight to the west of the village, stopped in front of a vermilion door in the west of the village, and knocked on the door. After a while, a man came out of the door. When he saw Jiang Cheng, he immediately held the doorway. "My house is out of food, our mother didn't eat last night, and she's still hungry." Looking at that posture, it seemed that he was afraid that Jiang Cheng would enter the door or open your mouth to borrow food from him. This man is Jiang Cheng's elder brother Jiang Hai. Jiang Cheng looked at his slightly protruding belly, and said it would be a lie not to be disappointed. Jiang Hai took over Father Jiang's class and worked as a shopkeeper in a restaurant in the town. His life was prosperous, even if the past 2 years were bad, it would not be so. "Who is it?" A woman in the courtyard asked loudly, and then said, "No matter who it is, there must be no borrowed food, and we still can't eat enough ourselves." "I know." Jiang Hai replied, looking at Jiang Cheng, "That means, you heard it, our family still can't get enough to eat." Jiang Cheng knew this was the result. "I want to see my mother," he muffled. He was about to leave here soon. After leaving, he didn't know if he would meet again in this life. He thought that he should meet and talk to Mrs. Jiang. "See mother." Jiang Hai snorted. He took it for granted that Jiang Cheng didn't get well with him, so he wanted to borrow money from Mrs. Jiang. "Mother, the second brother said he wanted to see you." He still held the door open and shouted inside. "Now that I know I want to see me, why didn't I expect to have a mother like me when I married that spoiled daughter-in-law?" Mrs. Jiang said angrily inside. At the beginning, Jiang Cheng wanted to marry the Chen family, but the old lady Jiang disagreed 100 times. In the end, Jiang Cheng still married the Chen family. The old lady Jiang directly separated them and gave them nothing. "She and Jiang Cheng." "Mother!" Jiang Cheng called from outside the door. "Married a daughter-in-law and forgotten my mother, I don't have a son like you." Mrs. Jiang scolded. Her words were very heartbreaking. Jiang Cheng had never forgotten her. These years of marriage, every time the Jiang family made something delicious, she was not the first to remember her. Jiang Cheng felt resentful, fell to his knees, and kowtowed to Mrs. Jiang. Jiang Hai was inside the door, looking at him as if watching a joke. After kowtowing 3 times, Jiang Cheng raised his head. "Mother, I'm leaving." He meant that he was leaving Changfeng Mansion. "Get out!" Mrs. Jiang just said. She never came out to see Jiang Cheng from the beginning to the end. Jiang Cheng took a steady look into the courtyard, stood up, and walked away. In a dilapidated small courtyard in the south of the village, it was another scene at this time. Mrs. Chen closed the door, told Mr. Chen about her leaving in a low voice, and finally said, "Father, come with us." At the beginning, Mr. Chen and Mrs. Chen also fled here. Later Mrs. Chen married Jiang Cheng. Mr. Chen lived alone all the time. In the past 2 years, he had problems with his eyes and couldn't see clearly. Usually, Mrs. Chen took care of him. After Mrs. Chen left, he stayed alone, waiting to die. So Chen said so. "No, let's go, I can't live alone." Mr. Chen shook his head. He is old and his eyesight is not good, so following Mrs. Chen is not a drag on her. "Father." Mrs. Chen actually had a plan in mind, so she didn't say anything more. However, Mr. Chen entered the back room as if remembering something, and after a while, he came out with a cloth bag and handed it to Mrs. Chen. Chen opened the cloth bag, only to see a silver hairpin and a few pieces of silver inside. She recognized that the hairpin was her mother's relic. "It should have been given to you a long time ago. I always want to keep it by my side and look at it again, just like your mother is still there. Now that you are leaving, take it with you." Old Master Chen said. Chen's tears couldn't stop streaming down. She put away the cloth bag, and she became more firm in her thoughts. In the evening, everything was ready for the Jiang family. The sun had just set, and everyone began to sleep. At Chaoshi the next day, that is, after 2 o'clock in the morning, the Zhang family got up, took their things, and left the house quietly. The moment she locked the door, Chen's tears almost fell again, but this time, she held back, she couldn't cry. Jiang Cheng also felt uncomfortable, the road ahead was long, and his burden was even heavier. For a moment, he really wanted to go back and stay behind. What if the next year is better? But he also knew that he couldn't gamble because he couldn't afford to lose. On the contrary, Zhang Lin and the other 3 children were very interested. Perhaps in their view, this was just a long journey. Let's go. Jiang Cheng said. The family quietly went to the residence of Mr. Chen in the south of the village. Zhang Lin climbed over the low wall lightly, went in and opened the door. Jiang Cheng and others went directly into the yard. Who? Mr. Chen's eyesight is not good, his ears are extremely sensitive, and because he is old, he is easily awakened, so he heard the noise outside and asked in surprise. It's me, Dad. Jiang Cheng replied. Mr. Chen was very surprised. What happened at this time? Feeling uneasy, he quickly got up and opened the door. Father, come with us quickly. Jiang Cheng said in a low voice. Only then did Mr. Chen understand Chen's plan. It turned out that she had made up her mind to take him with her from the very beginning, but she didn't say anything yesterday just because she was afraid that he would refuse. Touched and sad at the same time, Mr. Chen didn't want to leave with Mrs. Chen, he just urged them to leave quickly, it would be bad if they were seen by others later. Of course Mrs. Chen refused to leave, and must bring Mr. Chen with her. Mr. Chen disagreed. 2 people were pulling and pulling. Zhang Yunzi watched anxiously from the side, she thought she should bring Mr. Chen with her. Mr. Chen's eyesight is bad, but his body is still very strong, so it's no problem to follow them. But if he was allowed to stay, the disaster would be even worse next year, and he would have to starve to death. Grandfather, if you don't leave, we won't leave either. She sincerely said to Mr. Chen, Father and Mother must take you with you, and that's what we mean. Yes, Grandpa, you can go with us, I will support you. Zhang Lin and the others immediately said, and after finishing speaking, the 3 of them surrounded Mr. Chen, some supported his arms, and some pulled his legs, and dragged him out. Mr. Chen's throat choked up, good boy, I'll go by myself. He finally understood what Chen and the others wanted, and decided to go with them. He didn't have anything to clean up, the most valuable thing was given to Mrs. Chen yesterday, so he took his clothes and went out with Mrs. Chen and others. The family continued to head south, intending to leave the village from the south, and then head south all the way. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it was still completely dark, and there was no one on the road. Seeing that they left the village, a female voice hesitated, Sister-in-law Chen, is that you? Chen Shi was startled, who? She asked in surprise. A woman turned the corner over there with a bucket of water. In the haze, Chen recognized her and heaved a sigh of relief, it turned out to be her. This woman's surname is Lu, and she was married into Jinia village, but she is much more difficult than her. It is said that she used to work in a kill, and the villagers didn't understand how the second child of the Lu family was good-looking and the family was rich, so how could she go out and marry such a woman? Maybe this woman is especially good at that kind of thing? After all, it came from that kind of place. Everyone is maliciously guessing. Because of this, no one in the village is willing to talk to Mrs. Lu, and Mrs. Lu usually stays at home, and never walks outside the gate. Such a day is also peaceful. But last year, the second child of the Lu family died of illness, and the Lu family became a widow with a child. There is a lot of gossip in front of the widow, especially this widow is good-looking and has that kind of experience, it seems that she is born to be frivolous. No wonder she came out to fetch water at this hour, Chen sighed, she had no friendship with Lu, but this time there was no rice to cook at home, she borrowed all the people she knew, but she didn't borrow a grain of rice, who would have thought of coming back? I ran into Lu Xi on the road, and she was willing to lend it to her. Mrs. Chen is grateful to Mrs. Lu, and regrets that she listened to the rumors and didn't spend more time with her. She bought the food the day before yesterday, and she was the first to pay back her food. It was not easy for her to be orphaned and widowed. Sister-in-law Chen, who are you? Mrs. Lu spoke nicely and softly. Mrs. Chen pulled her aside, saw that she was about to leave the village, and didn't want to hide it from her, so she told her their plan, and finally said to her, "Sister, you should make plans early. In case next year is a famine year." Needless to say, Liu's face has turned pale. In a year of peace, she would not have a good time. In a year of famine, even if she had money, she would probably be eaten alive. The Chen family finished talking here, turned around and followed Jiang Cheng and others to leave. "Thank you, sister-in-law, for reminding me. Sister-in-law is very kind and Yuaner, and I will definitely repay each other in the future," Lu Shi said later. Chen waved her hand. "She can't help her, it's not a kindness." After leaving Geneva village, there was a wilderness ahead. After walking for a long time, Mrs. Chen suddenly asked Jiang Cheng, "You said Yongziu, will you?" Jiang Cheng knew that she must have met Lu Shi and thought of Zhang Yongziu, fearing that she would also end up in that kind of place. "No." Jiang Cheng comforted her. Chen nodded. The Zhang family left, and they left a letter under Zhang Yongziu's pillow, explaining their whereabouts. In fact, in the dream, they also left Zhang Yunzu a letter, but by mistake, she didn't see that letter at all. The sky was bright, and Zhang Yunzu and others had already arrived in Lingkang County next door. They didn't have a guide, and they didn't dare to enter the county town, so they just walked through the villages and towns. The morning sun shines on everyone. Jiang Cheng was pushing the cart with their belongings on it, and Zhang Wu was sitting on a pile of bundles. His little face was full of excitement, and he kept urging Jiang Cheng to hurry up. Mrs. Chen helped Mr. Chen to walk on the left. Zhang Yunzu led Zhang Lin and Zhang Yongxiu to the right. When the family is together, it seems that the road under their feet is not so difficult. At this time, Zhang Yongxiu's life was not so easy. That woman, Mrs. Zhang, was taking her around, selling her like a peddler. Yes, goods are not like people at all, just like cattle, horses and sheep. Look at this face, this figure. Mrs. Zhang introduced Zhang Yongxiu to the rich businessman opposite with her face salivating. Zhang Yongxiu felt disgusted in her heart. This man could almost be her father. Besides, how can a small wealthy businessman compare with Enping Haofu? Ah! There was an exclamation, like the first cry of a new aureole. It turned out that Mrs. Zhang was dissatisfied with Zhang Yongxiu's face, as if someone owed her money, and pinched her waist. Zhang Yongxiu looked at Mrs. Zhang in surprise. Suddenly, she felt something on her feet again, and when she turned her head, she saw that the rich businessman was lifting her skirt and pinching her feet. Places like ancient feet are private parts. Even if Zhang Yongxiu had married someone in her dream, she had never been treated so frivolously. She was ashamed and angry, and backed away in panic. "The feet are a bit big," the rich businessman said, dissatisfied with his stomach, and glanced at Zhang Yongxiu from time to time. Her frightened look just now was quite attractive. Zhang Yongxiu's eyes turned red immediately, feeling wronged and angry at the same time. He still thinks her feet are big. Mrs. Zhang quickly whispered to the rich businessman, and looked at Zhang Yongxiu while talking. Zhang Yongxiu was angry and impatient. Shouldn't she be sold to Anping Marquis Mansion? What's going on? In the end, the deal was not negotiated because of the price. After leaving the rich merchant's house, Zhang Yongxiu breathed a sigh of relief, but Mrs. Zhang scolded her, calling her a loser, and she still took Zhou at this point. Just now, if someone touched her feet, she would make a fuss after being made comfortable by a man. Maybe if he doesn't touch her, she will have to rush to be touched. Mrs. Zhang is used to hanging out in low-class places, and when she starts to swear at people, she specializes in swearing at people in low places, and her swear words are very unpleasant. No matter where Zhang Yongziu passed by, her tears couldn't stop streaming down. She just wanted to kill herself and never suffer this humiliation again. But when she thought of Anpinghao's mansion and that man who was like a bright moon, she told herself that she had to persevere. Squeezing a smile, she said to Mrs. Zhang, "Auntie, Chongfeng mansion was hit hard and everyone has no money. Why don't we go to Luzhu, which has always been rich?" Luzhu, Anpinghao's mansion is in Luzhu, and she can't wait there. Go to Luzhu? Don't you need money to go to Luzhu? Xialangzi, as soon as you roll your eyes, I know what you're up to, don't try to fool me. Mrs. Zhang put her hips on her hips and scolded Zhang Yongziu again. After scolding enough, she took her to continue to go everywhere. There are brothels, wealthy households, and officials. Those buyers will wantonly comment on Zhang Yongziu's appearance, figure, and any minor flaws on her body. She is as if she has been stripped naked, allowing others to pick and choose, without dignity. Several times, she almost collapsed. Fortunately, she has always had a belief in her heart to support her. Just wait, when she becomes the young madam of the home mansion, she must make everyone who felt sorry for her look good. She silently swears. Zhang Yunzi wants to eat sesame seed cakes, crispy outside and tender inside. By the way, there are also boiled fish, beer duck, sweet and sour pork ribs, cashew nut shrimp. She remembers that she had dinner with friends before crossing, and these were the ones on the table. At that time, she lost weight and put down her chopsticks after eating very little. If she is given another chance, she swears, she will never let them down again. In the past 2 days, Zhang Yunzi's memories of modern times have become clearer, as if it was just yesterday. It's a robbery, help, come here, someone is robbing things. Zhang Yunzi was thinking about all kinds of delicacies when he heard someone shouting in front of him. She looked up and found that they were passing a village, and on the road ahead, there was a donkey cart, and beside the donkey cart, 2 men were pulling a bag. One of the old men looked about 40 or 50 years old, and he was the one who shouted. Opposite him was a dark man in his 30s. The old man was obviously not as strong as the man opposite him, and the bag in his hand was about to be shot away. Zhang Cheng also saw this scene. He was enthusiastic, and immediately shouted, "Let go!" Seeing someone coming, the dark man panicked, but he didn't let go of the bag in his hand. The 2 of them used too much force, the cloth bag was torn, and a pile of rough pancakes fell to the ground. The dark man grabbed a pancake and stuffed it into his mouth. At this time, Zhang Cheng had already run over. The swarthy man quickly picked up a few pancakes, ran into the village in a hurry, and disappeared. Zhang Cheng wants to chase. "Father!" Zhang Yunzi hurriedly called to stop him. She saw just now that after the thick pancake fell to the ground, there were figures shaking in the nearby houses. That dark man robbed openly just now, but no one came out to stop him, which already shows some problems. In famine years, people can do anything to survive, so it's better to be careful. Zhang Cheng was also worried about Chen Qi and the others, so he stopped abruptly. Zhang Yunzi hurriedly helped the old man pick up pancakes. After a while, I picked up the pancakes. "Thank you, thank you." The old man couldn't stop thanking, these pancakes are also his life. "No need." Zhang Cheng helped him put the pancakes on the donkey cart. At this moment, a young man hurried out of the village carrying a bucket. He saw Zhang Cheng and immediately shouted, "What are you doing?" Running back, seeing Zhang Cheng holding his family's pancake bag, he thought he was going to grab their pancakes. "Qing Shan, it's not him, he's helping." Father Su quickly called the young man to stop. The young man came over and asked the whole story with a few words, only to realize that he had mistaken his benefactor for a thief, so he quickly apologized to Zhang Cheng. "No, get out of here quickly." Zhang Cheng also saw the figure next to him, and said vigilantly. Everyone set off immediately and left the village. When they reached the edge of a town and no one was following them, everyone felt relieved and started talking. Father Su and Su Qingshan, they are from the next county, and they also fled to the south, but they have a goal. They are going to Chenchi village, Wuling County, Luzhu, where there is a distant cousin of Father Su. They go there to visit relatives. But according to Mr. Su, he hadn't contacted him for 4 or 5 years, and he didn't know what was going on there. I'm afraid it's not very good, Zhang Yunzu thought to himself while listening. When Su Qingshan came out of the village just now, she felt that he looked familiar, but she didn't dare to recognize him, but now she was almost sure that it was him. Su Qingshan, in the dream he was Zhang Yunziu's husband, that is, her brother-in-law. He did not expect them to meet here. It seems that fate is really amazing. She remembered that in the dream he and the Zhang family lived in Qinghe village, Luyuan County, Luzhu, not Chenchi village, Wuling County, which meant that their marriage visit might not go well. Of course, there may be other reasons. Things in this world are almost completely different. Zhang Yunzu only found the Zhang family 7 years later in his dream, and only met Su Qingshan 2 or 3 times, so he didn't know much about his past. But unexpectedly met him here in advance, which shows that fate is sometimes very strange. Zhang Yunzu was thinking wildly. When Father Su heard that Zhang Cheng and the others were going to the south, he immediately invited them to go on the journey together, so that he could take care of him. Together with Father Su and the others, Zhang Cheng and the others took advantage. They were 2 men and a donkey cart. Zhang Cheng and the others are old and young, and there is only one small cart. At first Zhang Cheng didn't want to drag them down, but later Father Su insisted on this, so the 2 families walked together. Zhang Cheng continued to push the small cart. He was young and strong, so the donkey cart walked slowly, so it would not be a problem for him to keep up. Chen and the others could also take turns sitting in the donkey cart for a while, which made them a lot easier. The 2 families chatted a few words from time to time and got to know each other better. In Zhang Yunzu's impression, Su Qingshan was tall, but he often seemed to be hunched over. He was taciturn and seemed to listen to Zhang Yunziu in everything. But looking at him now, with a slender body, a rough face, and 2 piercing eyes, I really want to imagine how he will look like that 7 years later. Zhang Yunzu kept staring at Su Qingshan. Su Qingshan seemed to have sensed it, and turned to look at her. The eyes of the 2 met. Zhang Yunzu didn't dodge, and smiled at him friendly. The Zhang family's children are all good-looking, but the prettiest ones are sisters Zhang Yunzu and Zhang Yungziu. They all have fair skin, long brows with willow leaves and almond-shaped eyes, and red lips like plums in snow. It's just that Zhang Yunzu's appearance is soft, like an apricot blossom in spring, while Zhang Yungziu's appearance is more charming, like a silk hibiscus. Her smile is delicate, with watery light shining. It is indescribably touching. Su Qingshan blushed immediately, and hurriedly withdrew his gaze. He has never seen a more beautiful girl than her, especially those eyes, which are black and white, as if they have stars. Zhang Yunzu didn't care either. She didn't want to judge someone because of what happened in her dream. 2 days later, the group of them arrived at the edge of Zuding County, and Chongyuan County was further ahead. There was a large piece of uninhabited wasteland in the middle, and there was no way to replenish drinking water, so they stopped at a small shop by the road to rest. Second, buy some water and take it with you on the road. In the past, when there was no drought, we would go to various houses to ask for some water to drink, but now it is no longer possible. A bucket of water costs 10 yuan, and we have to buy it. After paying the money, the store brought out a bucket of water for them. The water was also muddy yellow. Zhang Yunzu took out her simple filter bottle, and after a while, a little bit of clear water flowed down from the jar. No matter how many times they looked at it, Su Qingshan and even Zhang Cheng felt that her filter bottle was very novel. Why was it just such an ordinary vase? So dirty water went in and clean water came out. They sat at a table by the roadside, drank tea and ate pancakes, and waited for the water to be filtered before heading on the road. At this moment, a group of people suddenly came from the west, like thunder. The team of more than a dozen people were all tall horses, and the people sitting immediately were all dressed in black clothes with golden unicorn patterns embroidered on them. With a knife on their waist, everyone is full of murderous aura. The one headed by Yu Qi has a pair of slightly slanted red phoenix eyes, like cold rivers and glaciers. Although the people in the small shop didn't know the origins of these people, they all knew that these people were not something they could mess with, so they unconsciously fell silent and looked over there cautiously. Seeing that person, Zhang Yunzu couldn't help but her heart pounded. Why was it him? Zhang Yunzu knew that man because his reputation was too great. Shen Fengming, the son of Princess Daniang, the nephew of the current emperor. Speaking of him, one cannot fail to mention the Kailan Guard he is in charge of. It is probably similar to the Jin Yiwei in the Ming dynasty. It directly obeys the emperor's orders and has the power of guarding, investigating, and jailing. The Kailan Guards of all dynasties have made everyone's expressions change, but when it comes to Shen Fengming's place, it is even more frightening and chills. Wherever he goes, those places where corruption and law-breaking, gangsterism and self-interest will inevitably flow like rivers of blood, so everyone mentions him in private and tells him not to stay, which shows that he has a strong reputation. In the dream, Zhang Yunzu had seen him before, when he suddenly came to the Lin mansion and proposed to stay in the mansion for a few days. No one in the Lin family knows his name. When he came to the door, it was like the king of Hades came to the door. Everyone suddenly felt that a catastrophe was imminent. Even Zhang Yunzu thought that the Lin family was going to play tricks, and wondered how she would survive if she became a criminal. During that time, the Lin family was really gloomy, and even Lin Ting'an was in doubt every day. Who would have thought that one day, he would leave suddenly, quietly? Everyone in the Lin family couldn't believe it, this of killing just left. At first they thought that he was leading the snake out of the hole, so they cast doubts. But who would have thought that after a month, the mansion was still calm, but there was news from the capital that he had returned to the capital. It was only then that the people in Lin's residence believed that Shen Fengming had really let them go, and they were safe. Survival after the catastrophe, ecstatic. Because of this, Marquis Anping finally nodded and agreed, and asked Lin Ting'an to officially marry him as his wife, making her the young wife of the Marquis. So speaking of it, Zhang Yunzu was also in his favor in the dream. As for why he suddenly came to the door and why he left, it has always been a mystery. Zhang Yunzu's feeling for him is just one word: fear. Especially thinking that they are refugees now, that is, people who have no way to lead 100 miles away from their household registration. When they met Shen Fengming, it was like a mouse meeting a cat. Now she only hopes that Shen Fengming's pedestrians will leave quickly. But the sky didn't seem to hear her call. The pedestrians actually slowed down as they got closer to the shop, as if they were going to hit the tip here. The shop owner was both happy and nervous when he saw the big business. Zhang Yunzu was thinking, is it too late for them to leave now? It was too late. Those Kailan guards were very fast, they had already arrived in front of the small shop, they got off their horses one by one, looking well trained. "Boss, bring some pots of hot tea and some food. We are in a hurry. By the way, the horses have to be fed and drunk, and your money is indispensable." A tall man walked towards the store while facing the store. Said the boss. His name is Yang Sheng, and he is Shen Fengming's deputy. Yes, yes. The owner of the shop hurriedly agreed, and arranged for someone to feed the horses, while he wiped the tea on the table and urged the kitchen to hurry up. The shop is not big, there are only 7 or 8 tables, 2 tables of guests, and the guests at that table have almost eaten. Seeing such a group of people, they immediately checked out and left, leaving only Zhang Yunzu and others in the shop. Not long after Zhang Yunzu and the others arrived, they hadn't finished their tea and were hesitating when those Kailan guards came in and Halala filled all the remaining tables, blocking them directly at the table in the corner. As for Shen Fengming, he was sitting at a table on the other side, and Yang Sheng was the only one on his table. This small shop only makes steamed buns, and some simple cold dishes. These things are convenient. After a while, several baskets of steamed buns and a few dishes of cold dishes are placed on each table. Or, let's go to. Surrounded by such a group of people full of evil spirits, Father Su said to Jiang Cheng in a low voice, his calf twisted. Jiang Cheng was also afraid of causing trouble, so he nodded and wanted to find a gap to go to the shop owner to pay the bill. At this moment, Yang Sheng spat out a mouthful of water. He was extremely thirsty, so after getting the tea bowl, he couldn't wait to take a big sip. But is this tea? Chinese herbal soup is about the same. Shopkeeper, storekeeper. He held up a tea bowl and called the shopkeeper. The shop owner came out in a hurry. What, guest officer? What is this? Yang Sheng asked. His clothes and appearance are not angry or intimidating. The shop owner's legs were weak, and he looked at the tea bowl in his hand. Tea. He stammered. Is this tea? Why does it smell strange? Yang Sheng asked. The shop owner heard what he said, and looked at their dusty appearance, and guessed, everyone came from afar, right? The water in Chongfeng Mansion tastes like this. Without waiting for Yang Sheng to ask, he continued, the water in Chongfeng Mansion didn't taste like this. Isn't it a severe drought for 2 years? Sheng Shui is good, who cares if it tastes good or not? Is the drought in Chongfeng Mansion very serious? A clear voice suddenly asked. It was Shen Fengming. Serious? Why not serious? The common people are almost dying. Especially this year's locust plague, that's. The shop owner opened a shop here, and he has never seen anything coming and going every day. Speaking of this year's disaster, he sighed endlessly. Didn't the imperial court distribute rice grains for disaster relief? Shen Fengming's voice became colder. Rice grain? Maybe it was distributed elsewhere, but I didn't see it anyway, said the shop owner. Shen Fengming looked at Zhang Yunzu and the others. In this store, apart from the owner, they were the only ones left, and seeing that they were dragging their families, they seemed to be victims of disasters. Yang Sheng understood, and immediately came to Zhang Yunzu and the others. Zhang Yunzu's scalp was numb, she was really afraid of something. Father Su and the others also became nervous. Yang Sheng walked to Zhang Yunzu's table, but was attracted by the vase that was filtering the water. What is it? He looked carefully, and saw that it was just an ordinary broken vase, but dirty water flowed in from above, and clean water came out. He picked up the vase, weighed it, and poured the contents of the vase on the ground. A layer of pebbles, a layer of coarse sand, a layer of fine sand, and a layer of charcoal, and finally a bit of cotton wool and a layer of cotton cloth. What a neat thing! It's not that the Xia dynasty doesn't have clean water. Like their Kailanwei, they use a kind of pill made of alum. When they encounter dirty water in the wild, they use one. In addition, he has seen water washing method, stone washing method, etc., but he has never seen such a simple and delicate method, and the effect seems to be better. He reached out and took a tea bowl from the side, and scooped a bowl from the bucket below. Sure enough, the water was extremely clear. Take a sip, there is no peculiar smell at all. Who made this? He asked curiously. Zhang Cheng and the others all looked at Zhang Yunzu. It's me. Zhang Yunzu could only reply. Yang Sheng looked at her, but his eyes lit up. He didn't notice that there were so many people just now. There was such a girl in this small shop. Her eyes were clear and eager, like a weed in water. How did you come up with that? He asked. Naturally, it was improved by later generations based on the experience of the predecessors, but Zhang Yunzu didn't dare to say that, and said what he had told Zhang Cheng and the others before, that is, he heard some old people in the village mention it, so he decided to try it. Try it, I didn't expect it to work. Yang Sheng has been traveling all over the world for so many years, and has seen many strange people and strange things. He was not too surprised when he heard the words, but felt that Zhang Yunzu had a clever mind. May I have some water for tea? He asked. Okay. Zhang Yunzu dared not say a word. Yang Sheng directly handed the filtered water to the shopkeeper, and gave him a bag of tea leaves, asking him to make some tea quickly. By the way, serve them some steamed stuffed buns and side dishes, and charge them to my account. He ordered the shopkeeper again. The shopkeeper went there immediately, and after a while, he brought a few baskets of buns and 5 or 6 dishes of side dishes on Zhang Yunzu's table. The steamed buns are white and big. Through the thin skin, the filling inside can be faintly seen, tender and rosy. A dish of 5-spice bean curd, a dish of peanuts in old vinegar, a dish of sliced salted duck eggs with burnt yellow oil inside, a dish of cold pig ears, and a dish of fragrant braised pork. One can imagine how tempting these things are to people like Zhang Yunzu who eat cold pancakes and drink cold water every day. Even Father Su couldn't remember when was the last time he ate braised pork. Zhang Wu and the other children stared straight at the white and fat buns, wishing they could swallow them in one gulp. Fortunately, Mrs. Chen and Zhang Cheng had taught them the word of politeness. They all held back and did not touch the food. You're welcome, eat it, and treat this as a gift from me using your water. By the way, I messed up your things. Yang Sheng turned around and said to the shopkeeper, a few more steamed buns. He found out, these few cages of buns were not enough for Zhang Yunzu and the others. The shopkeeper brought up 4 or 5 baskets again, filling up the tables. Now, almost everyone had a basket of steamed stuffed buns in front of them. The unique sweet fragrance of wheat penetrated into everyone's hearts. Yang Sheng made a gesture of invitation. Father Su and the others couldn't make up their minds. They looked at Zhang Yunzu, the vase belonged to her, and so did the water. Zhang Yunzu felt that it was better to follow Yang Sheng's lead, so she said to him, "Thank you." Then she said softly to Father Su and the others, "I'm so kind, let's eat." After finishing speaking, she picked up a steamed stuffed bun first, put it in the Jianggu bowl. Zhang Wu looked at her, waited for affirmative eyes, and bit the bun. The delicious gravy flowed into his mouth in an instant, and he thought it was the most delicious bun in the world. Seeing this, other people also started to eat one after another, like a wind in a cloud. Yang Sheng moved a chair and sat next to Zhang Yunzu's table, and when they were almost done eating, he asked, "Where are you going?" With enough food and drink, and Yang Sheng didn't look like a bad person, Dad Su and the others were not so afraid of him, so they started talking to him. After a while, they revealed their true self, and even said a lot of dissatisfaction with the local government. Zhang Yunzu tried to interrupt several times but failed. In fact, this Yang Sheng is too powerful, and his methods of inducing and manipulating confessions are top-notch. How can Father Su and his honest people resist his cross-examination? Zhang Yunzu sat obediently on the chair, and now she just hoped that the people opposite would let them go because they were just ordinary people. At this time, the shopkeeper had finished making tea and brought out the tea. Immediately, a fragrant tea fragrance wafted out. It is a top-quality sparrow tongue, but it is a pity that the store did not cook it correctly, which spoiled the fragrance of the tea. Zhang Yunzu also tasted it in Anpingho Mansion in her dream, so when she smelled the tea fragrance, she immediately made a judgment. Yang Sheng also frowned, but now that he was extremely thirsty, he couldn't pay that much attention. He took the teapot and brought it in front of Shen Fengming, poured him a bowl first, then poured himself a bowl, and started to drink without caring about the heat. Looking at him, it seems that he really just had a casual conversation with Zhang Yunzu and the others just now, and he didn't want to do anything to them. As if being pardoned, Zhang Yunzu said to Zhang Cheng, "Father, it's time for us to hurry." Zhang Cheng immediately got up and went to settle accounts with the boss. The buns and side dishes were invited by Yang Sheng, but they had to pay for the tea and water themselves. The shop owner suggested that he wanted to buy Zhang Yunzu's water purification method. Jiang Cheng called Zhang Yunzu over again and asked her opinion. Of course Zhang Yunzu was willing to do this. Ordinary people don't have the guts to use it. The rich can't afford it, so the shop owner is willing to buy it. This is a rare opportunity. The shop owner refused to pay more. First, he thought the method was quite simple, but he didn't see it clearly just now, so he bought it from Zhang Yunzu on purpose. Second, it was too expensive and he didn't need it. Anyway, the people who come to his shop are ordinary people, and the next time they meet Yang Sheng and the others, they don't know when they will have to wait. After some conversation, the shop owner finally used 3 cages of steamed stuffed buns, added 2 buckets of water, and saved Zhang Yunzu's tea money to buy a way to purify the water. Just like this, Jiang Cheng and the others felt that they had won for nothing, and they were extremely happy. Well, Zhang Yunzu also frowned, at least there are meat buns to eat tonight. After they left, Yang Sheng looked at Zhang Yunzu's back and sighed, it's a pity. Shen Fengming looked up at him. Yang Sheng laughed, as the saying goes, a clever woman often sleeps with a clumsy husband. This girl comes from a humble family background. It's not a pity that I don't know which clumsy husband she will marry in the future. He is also his friend, so he is one of the few people who dare to talk to Shen Fengming like this. Shen Fengming didn't want to talk to him. But Yang Sheng suddenly said, how about I take her with me? Yang Sheng is a man of tenderness, and there are countless beauties in his mansion. It's important. Shen Fengming said. Yang Sheng put away his smile, but still complained, that's how you are, you don't give a about girls. Do you know that my old lady will suspect that you don't like women and have something wrong with me? Really? Shen Fengming's voice was as cold as icicles under the eaves in winter. Yang Sheng quickly shook his head and got down to business. Leaving the steamed stuffed bun shop, Zhang Yunzu kept urging everyone to hurry, and she didn't calm down until she couldn't even see the shadow of the shop. Who were those people just now? What we said didn't have any effect, right? Now, after thinking about it, Father Su felt that he had talked to Yang Sheng a little too much. Of course it will affect the officials of Chongfeng Mansion, Zhang Yunzu thought. But there is nothing to say, those officials, if they are innocent, naturally they are not afraid of Shen Fengming, otherwise they disregard the lives of the common people, even if they are killed by Shen Fengming, they should be killed. It should be fine, but let's go to Luzhu quickly. Zhang Yunzu comforted Father Su without forgetting to urge him. There might be an accident in Chongfeng Mansion, they had better leave early. 10 days later, in front of the yamen of the Chongfeng Mansion, dozens of human heads rolled to the ground, blood splattered everywhere. Shen Fengming stood on the pool of blood, dressed in black clothes, his handsome face was spattered with some blood, like Shura in the abattoir. Everyone didn't dare to look up at him, and they only thought in their hearts that the reputation of Shen Buliu is really worthy. Yang Sheng had a worried look on his face, he was worried about Shen Fengming. These officials in Chongfeng Mansion are not good at disaster relief, and they are full of private pockets, so they should be killed. However, it is also possible not to kill. However, Shen Fengming was all killed, leaving no leeway. But they don't know that steel is very easy to break, everyone is afraid of you, and the next step is that everyone expects you to die. Throughout the history books, such people generally do not end well. If it really gets to that point, I'm afraid the emperor won't be able to keep him. Yang Sheng really wanted to persuade his friend, but he also knew that he couldn't persuade him, so he was really worried. At this time, Zhang Yunzu and the others finally left the boundary of Chongfeng Mansion and arrived in Luzhu. In Luzhu, Zhang Yunzu suddenly felt a little emotional. Enpinghao's mansion is in Luzhu. She was in Luzhu in her dream. Zhang Cheng and the others fled to Luzhu, but they haven't seen each other for several years. Now, she has come to Luzhu again, thinking that Zhang Yunxiu should be there too, so it can be seen that they have a predestined relationship with this Luz Hu. After more than half a month of running around, the 50 caddies of sorghum pancakes prepared by Mrs. Chen and others had already been eaten, and everyone was dusty and disheveled. The people's livelihood in Luz Hu is obviously much better than that in Chongfeng Mansion. The price of food is stable and the water source is plentiful. Finally, people don't need to buy water to drink, saving a lot of money. They continued to move forward, and on the third day, it suddenly rained lightly, like oil. It had been almost 2 years since he had seen rain. Jiang Cheng wiped the raindrops off his face with his hands, feeling extremely excited. It seemed that their decision to come to Luz Hu was correct. I've inquired about it, and I'll be in Wuling County in 5 days. Su Qingshan trotted back and said to everyone. 5 days later, another piece of good news, everyone seemed to have strength again. In Wuling County, a large stretch of green hills can be seen from a distance, stretching from sky to sun, seemingly without end, that is Wuling Mountain. The people here are extremely rich. After inquiring, they found out that there are iron mines in Wuling Mountain. In the early years, when the nearby villagers went up the mountain, they often picked up some black stones, and merchants bought them when they brought them home. At first they didn't know what they were, but later the government sent people to them, and they realized that they were iron ore. The Xia dynasty had strict control over salt and iron. Soon, a large number of troops entered the mountains to mine and smelt iron. These projects require manpower, so more than half of the people in Wuling County work in the mountains. The wages paid by the government are not low, and the people in Wuling County live well. Jiang Cheng was tempted when he heard it. Now they have no land, no real estate, and less than 2 taels of silver left in their hands. How can such a big family live on? If they could go to the mountains to work, they would be paid 20 yuan a day and 6 denarii a month. In a few years, they would be able to own their own houses and fields. Su Qingshan was also very moved when he heard that 6 renminbi a month is really high enough. Of course it's high. Not everyone can do that job. You have to have strength. The old man who was talking looked up and down Jiang Cheng and Su Qingshan. They are both very strong, so they should be okay. Also, there are frequent accidents in that mountain. Hey! The old man sighed. Wuling County is really a mine, and a mine is also a mine. In that stretch of mine, I don't know how many young and strong people in Wuling County are buried. Jiang Cheng can't control so much now, he just wants to make money so that his wife and children will have enough to eat and drink, and if he doesn't go to the mountains, he might starve and suffer from cold when he goes to other places. With the bottom line in his mind, he decided to stay in Wuling County for the time being and not go south. Father Su was naturally happy when he heard that. He had shared weal and woe with the Zhang family for so many days, and he knew their temperament, so he was reluctant to part with them. Everyone decided to go to Chenchi village to have a look before making plans. Chenchi village is not far from Wuling Mountain. There is a small river flowing through the village, and the water is clear. Many families in the village have built new houses, green brick and tile houses, and it is dusk. When the smoke is rising, it is a thriving scene. Su Qingshan inquired with a passing villager, and found out the address of his distant cousin Gu Yongde. It is the largest and best-built house in the village. Looking at the magnificent house, Father Su and Su Qingshan were both confused. They hadn't contacted for a few years, and they suddenly came to the door. Who knows what they will think? Besides, they are so rich, yet they are so poor. Before they could knock on the door, a young man walked out of the yard. The young man was dressed in a green cloth robe, his hair was high, he looked handsome, he was full of bookishness, noble and elegant, really like the noble son of a rich family. Who are you? The young man's voice was polite and nice. Father Su declared his family name. Cousin and cousin are here, please come in quickly. The young man said enthusiastically, and then shouted into the courtyard, Father, Mother, Cousin and cousin are here. With just this one sentence, the tears of Father Su and Su Qingshan almost fell. They both said good words that 3 winters are warm, and evil words hurt people in June. It is true. There was movement inside, and after a while, a middle-aged couple came out from the inside, saw Father Su. Both of them were very kind, welcomed them into the courtyard, and asked them how they were doing in the past few years. Father Su said yes in several voices. He was about to enter the door, and suddenly remembered Jiang Cheng's family. They haven't been found yet. Looking outside, he saw that the place where Jiang Cheng and the others were standing just now was empty. It turned out that Jiang Cheng was relieved when he saw that Su and his father had found their relatives, and the relatives were very enthusiastic. He didn't want to bother Father Su to beg for help for them, so he took Mrs. Chen and the others and left silently. Father Su secretly gave thumbs up. The Jiang family is really the best. Suddenly he saw Su Qingshan's distraught look. He knew it. He knew that he fell in love with that girl from the Jiang family. He also liked that girl. If he could marry her, it would be great. Since the Jiang family decided to stay here, there is no rush. Jiang Cheng led Mrs. Chen and others across a street, and saw an old woman picking beans at the door. The old woman had a gentle face, so Mrs. Chen went over to ask if there was anyone in the village who could rent a house. The people of the Chen family are gentle in appearance and good in speech. The old woman heard that they escaped here, and seeing them old and young, all of them sallow and emaciated, she felt pity for them. My house has a yard at the head of the village, where we used to live. Later we built this new house, and it was vacant there. If you want to rent it, you can rent it to you. Mrs. Chen was overjoyed when she heard the words, "Thank you, Auntie." But the old woman said, "Don't be in a hurry to thank me, the house is rented to you, and the money is easy to discuss, but you are not local. If you want to rent a house to stay here, you need the village chief's consent, and then go to the government to report it." Row. This is hard to scare people. The village chief, why should he promise you a stranger to stay in the village, and go to the government to guarantee you? Chen raised his heart again, dare to ask the village chief. The old woman pointed to the best house in the village. That's right there. The village chief's surname is Gu, and his name is Gu Yongde. It was such a coincidence that Jiang Cheng remembered that the house that old Su entered just now was the village head's house that the old woman said. Feeling concerned, he went over to the old woman and asked her to allow them some time. He told the old woman the reason again. At this moment, the village chief was reuniting with Father Su, so he didn't want to disturb him. That's exactly the reason. The old woman was also relieved when he heard that he had escaped with the relatives of the village chief. "Let's go, I'll show you the house first," she said with the bamboo basket in her hand. She walked ahead, Jiang Cheng and others quickly followed. There is a yard at the head of the village, surrounded by mountains and rivers. The yard is very large. There are 4 main rooms, 3 side rooms, a stove, a cellar, etc., and even some furniture. The house is not new, but it is much better than the house the Jiang family lived in before. It is spacious and strong. This is where we used to live. Isn't this a new house? Speaking of the new house, the old woman's face was full of joy. Jiang Cheng saw her new house just now. It has 5 main rooms and 2 courtyards. It is really magnificent. He was envious in his heart, and whenever he could have a house like this, he would be satisfied. There will be, when he enters the mine, everything will be there. He is full of expectations for the future. The two negotiated the price, 1 tael a year, and the contract will be signed when Jiang Cheng finds the village head tomorrow and reports to the county. The Jiang family can live here first tonight. The old woman is a local, and she is not afraid of being cheated by outsiders like the Jiang family. Jiang Cheng thanked Mrs. Chen for their kindness, and said that they met a good man, and such a good house only cost 1 or 2 taels of silver a year. They were polite and courteous, and the old woman was also happy. Anyway, she had lived in the house for more than 10 years, and she also had feelings. She was relieved to rent it to such a family. Otherwise, she would rather not have that little money than let others defile her house. Okay, you're tired too, pack up and get some rest. The old woman smiled and left. After closing the door, Mrs. Chen looked at the bright house, then at Jiang Cheng and the others. Her eyes were red again. Finally, they had a place to live again. Jiang Cheng was also heartbroken, and he held her hand and said, "It will get better." Chen nodded fiercely. She said this before to comfort herself, but now, she believes, yes, it will get better. The family began to tidy up the house. The house is well maintained, as long as it is cleaned, it can live in. Zhang Yunzi was busy tidying up her room, and finally, she went to bed again. She didn't expect that Father Su's journey to seek relatives would be so smooth, and they would also be honored. Zhang Yuz ran back and forth excitedly, looking here and there for a while, and asked Chen and the others with a small face from time to time, "Mother, can we really live here in the future?" "Of course." Chen and the others would answer him tirelessly, and the huge courtyard became lively again. In the evening, someone knocked on the door again. It turned out that the old woman brought over a pot of hot soup and a few pancakes mixed with white flour, thinking that the Zhang family must have nothing to eat when they first arrived here. "How can this be done? We can't ask for it," Chen said hurriedly. "Pancakes mixed with white flour are only eaten on special occasions." The old woman didn't care. The people in Wuling County were rich, and this pancake was just their daily food. Leaving pancakes, she left. This night, the Zhang family drank hot soup and ate hot pancakes, and felt warm in their hearts. Occasionally, a thought flashed in Jiang Cheng's mind. They fled famine this time, they had 6 taels of silver in their hands, and they met Father Su and the two of them, so they got here so smoothly. Road. He really didn't dare to imagine how hard it would be. Fortunately. After a sweet night, the next morning, Jiang Cheng got up, washed himself up, and went to find the village chief, Gu Yongde. Gu Yongde didn't know him, but Mr. Su knew him well. He immediately asked Jiang Cheng to help him drive away the thieves, and then the two families supported each other. Then he told Gu Yongde about the safe arrival in Chenchi village, and his words were all correct. Jiang Cheng's words of praise. "So that's the case, then this matter is easy to handle." Gu Yongde believed that Father Su, Wuling County is currently short of people. As long as he talks about this matter, it will be possible. Thank you. Jiang Cheng thanked Gu Yongde, and thanked Father Su. "Hey, thank you between our two families." Father Su's words seemed to have deep meaning. In fact, Jiang Cheng also likes Su Qingshan very much. Su's family has a simple population. If Zhang Yunzi marries, he should not be offended. But this matter has to be discussed with Zhang Yunzi, and now is not a good time to talk about it, so he just pretends not to understand. Gu Yongde did what he said, just right. If Father Su and Su Qingshan wanted to stay here for a long time, they would have to go through this. The three of them went to the county government office together. In less than 2 hours, Jiang Cheng returned, his face full of joy. "Is it done?" Mrs. Chen was standing at the door waiting. Jiang Cheng showed her the household registration certificate in his hand. "I owe the village chief and the Su family a big favor again." To be able to do it so smoothly, the package of tea leaves that Gu Yongde stuffed into the county Yaman's book played a big role. There is no one who asks others to do something and asks them to pay for it. Even if the money is not all for him, Jiang Cheng feels that he owes others too much, and decides in his heart that if he has money in the future, he must repay it double. Mrs. Chen took the certificate, looked at it happily, and then put it away properly. At this point, they are considered to be from Wuling County, and they no longer have to worry about being arrested by the government as refugees or driven back to their original places. "I'll go to Aunt Zhao to sign the contract for renting the house." Jiang Cheng decided to settle all these matters in one go. "I'll go with you," Chen said. After a while, the two came back and signed the contract, and everything was settled. There was only less than one tael of silver left in her hand. Chen said, "I'll go to the town to buy some food and things to use." She thought, she didn't know if the one tael of silver was enough to spend. The hairpin left by her mother was pawned. "Although I don't want to, I have to change everything in a new home. In addition, the weather is getting colder and colder. I have to cover up sooner or later, and I need to add clothes on weekdays. There are places where money is spent everywhere. I'll go ask in the afternoon how I can get into the mine to work." Jiang Cheng knew the difficulties at home and said immediately. After eating something hastily at noon, the couple acted separately. When Zhang Yunzu heard that Mrs. Chen was going to the town, she immediately offered to go with her. She was about to check the prices here, thinking of a way to make money. Jiang Cheng went to work in the mine. If he could not go, it was better not to go, it was too dangerous. When Zhang Lin and the others heard about it, they wanted to follow immediately. Chen thought she had a lot of things to buy later, so it would be good for them to follow along to help get them. Several people went to town together. Although Hongyi town is just a small town, but because the people are rich, the streets are more lively than Zhang Yunzu's original county town, with people selling cloth, food, furniture, mules and horses, everything that one expects to find. Chen went shopping around. Zhang Yunzu looked left and right. The freshly baked sesame seed cakes cost 3 renminbi with meat stuffing, and 1 penny for spiced ones. Oily meat pies cost 5 renminbi each, and you can get a bowl of millet porridge and pickles for free when you buy the meat pies. You can smell it from a long distance away. Fragrant mutton soup, a bowl of 10 cents, paired with 2 cents of cake, can eat to one's heart's content. Zhang Yunzu only looks at those who sell food. She thinks very clearly that she has no capital and no way out, and there is no way to do other businesses. Make money. She liked to cook in modern times, and in her dream, she stayed in the kitchen of the Anping Marquis for 2 years and learned a lot of skills. As long as she found the right location, it shouldn't be difficult to sell some snacks. It's just that she couldn't make up her mind for a while what to do. In the evening, several people returned with a full load of things. Pots and pans, grain, oil and salt, and bought 2 more pieces of cloth to make a quilt. Finally looks like a living family. Jiang Cheng had already been waiting at home. "I have already made an agreement with the person in charge of recruiting, and I will go to work in the mine tomorrow. 6 Jian silver a month, you can advance 1 month's wages in advance." He finished talking excitedly, and put a large string of copper coins was handed to Mrs. Chen. A large bunch of heavy money seems to have more impact than a dime, and the family is short of money now. "Can you still advance the money?" Chen asked happily, taking the money. The recruiter said that there is a shortage of people in the mine recently, so the new regulations have been added. Jiang Cheng returned, and he thought he had caught up with the good time. There are so many people going, but there is still a shortage of people? Such a high salary. Chen was happy, but suddenly worried again. "It's okay, I went to see it, and I can do the job. Besides, everyone in the county is working there, and everyone else is fine, so what can I do?" Jiang Cheng comforted her. Chen felt that this was the reason again, and hurried to cook for him so that he could rest early. Zhang Yunzu was listening, and suddenly slapped her forehead. How could she forget the most profitable place? With so many people working in the mine, the market prospect is huge. She immediately asked about the Zhongcheng mine in detail, mainly about food and accommodation. Zhongcheng has already visited the mine this year and has a certain understanding of it. These workers eat at home in the morning and evening, and bring their own meals at noon. It is said that there is a canteen in the mine, but it is for the officers and soldiers stationed and some experienced craftsmen. There are also several large sheds on the mine, and there are datong shops inside. If there are workers far away from the mine, they can also live there, and it only costs 40 yuan a month. The living conditions are poor and money is required. Most people in the mine would rather spend more time at home to live. By the way, Jiang Cheng also saw that there was a market at the foot of the mountain. When he went there, it was the hour of work, and there were no people there, but it was probably very lively when work started and left. That's it, that market, Zhang Yunzu thought in her heart, and decided to go to see it with Jiang Cheng tomorrow. Chenchi village is close to the mine, so Jiang Cheng rushed there after breakfast the next day. Zhang Yunzu followed by his side. Before the two left the village, they met people who were going to the mine. The more they walked to the mine, the more people around them. When you come to the foot of the mountain, you can see a large area of fireworks from a distance. When you get closer, you can see a large market. Most of the market sells food and smells. If you don't eat in the morning, you will come here. You must be hooked so that you can't walk. At this time, the bazaar was very lively, many workers and even many officers and soldiers on duty came here to buy something to eat, and the crowds were crowded. The gate of Chenchi mine will be closed, and there will be no one here, Jiang Cheng said. Chenchi is 7 o'clock in the morning. These miners start work at 7 o'clock in the morning, rest for half an hour at noon, and stop work at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Zhang Yunzu calculated that they have to work 11 hours a day, and they do the best tired physical work, really hard work. Jiang Cheng didn't think that he was already very satisfied with such high wages for the same work. The two walked forward all the way, and Zhang Yunzu wondered what he should sell. At this time, a man with a big beard who obviously dressed differently passed by them, followed by two soldiers. Vice General Zhao, what do you want to eat today? I will go down and buy it for you. A soldier asked the bearded man. What's delicious? I've been eating these all day long, and the birds have faded out of my mouth. The bearded man resented. They pass quickly. But Zhang Yunzu stopped in her tracks. She suddenly thought of what she could sell. I bought some lamb bones, added secret seasonings, and boiled for 3 hours. The bones turned white and the soup was mellow and fragrant. At this time, add water to knead the noodles, and after kneading the noodles into a dough, add water and knead continuously to wash out the gluten. Pour the washed water into the bone soup, add radish, bean curd, vermicelli, spinach, etc. in turn, and finally put the kneaded gluten into the pot, boil it on high heat, and make the soup thicker on low heat. The big pot of hot and spicy soup is ready. Vice General Zhao reminded Zhang Yunzu that it's late autumn and it's in the mountains again. Isn't it suitable to drink this? Zhang Yunzu took out a bowl with a spoon, added green onion and coriander, and handed it to Mr. Chen first. Grandfather, you have a taste. The Zhang family was already overwhelmed by the smell of the sheep's head soup. Hearing this, Mr. Chen fumbled to take the bowl, and scooped up the contents with a spoon. Like soup but not all soup, a strong fragrance hits the face. When you eat it, the taste of pepper explodes in your mouth immediately, followed by the umami of mutton soup, the sweetness of radish, the fragrance of bean curd, etc. The fragrance moistens the mouth, as if the soul has been awakened. Mr. Chen took a sip, and couldn't help but take a second and a third sip. He didn't put down the bowl in satisfaction until he finished the bowl of soup. At this time, fine beads of sweat appeared on the tip of his nose. How is it? Zhang Yunzu asked eagerly. Comfortable. Mr. Chen can only use these two words to describe it. It is so comfortable. This bowl of soup is for drinking. This is the effect Zhang Yunzu wanted, and immediately asked with a smile, then Grandpa thinks, how about I sell this soup? She wanted to sell Hu spicy soup, but Mrs. Chen disagreed. The family only had so much money to do business with. If they lost money, would their family drink Northwest Wind this month? There was no other way. Zhang Yunzu could only ask Mr. Chen for help. His words still carried weight. Mr. Chen didn't answer in a hurry. He lowered his head and pondered for a while, and asked, how much does your pot of soup cost? Zhang Yunzu had figured it out a long time ago, and immediately said, originally, this soup tastes better when cooked with mutton, but it is cheaper to use mutton bones. These mutton bones only cost 9 coins, and it can be cheaper if you buy more. The rest is flour, 4 taels flour, 3 wen coins. Vegetables, this soup is called baj hen soup, which means there are 8 kinds of vegetables in it. These dishes can be mixed according to the seasons. I use the cheapest and most delicious dishes now, which add up to 3 yuan. Finally, there are seasonings, firewood, etc., counting 3 wen. The total cost of this pot of soup is 18 wen. Mr. Chen was surprised when he heard that the cost of such a big pot of broth is so low. Then how much are you going to sell for a bowl? He smelled something different and asked immediately. 20 cents a bowl. There should be 20 bowls of this pot of soup, which means it can sell for about 40 cents. Mr. Chen was taken aback when he heard that such a delicious and rich soup only costs 2 cents a bowl. But even so, there are nearly double the profits. Good business, this is indeed a good business. He rubbed his cane twice, and suddenly said, this soup should be served with something else. This Zhang Yunzu has also thought about it. She wants to make some white cakes and stewed meat. The white cakes can be soaked in soup with meat and can be eaten alone. The main reason is that it is convenient, you can make it at home, and you can sell it there. The market at the foot of the mountain sells food, and what they want is speed. Mr. Chen found out that his granddaughter wanted to start a business, and she didn't just mess around. She had already thought of everything. I think it's okay, he said solemnly. Mrs. Chen also tasted Zhang Yunzu's soup just now, and heard her speak clearly and logically, and began to hesitate in her heart. Now I heard Mr. Chen say that again, why don't you let Zhang Yunzu try? If you want to do it, make it well. I tasted your soup, and it doesn't seem to go well with white cakes. It's good with meat pies, but meat cakes are too expensive. Mr. Chen said suddenly at this moment. When Zhang Yunzu heard this, she wanted to give him a thumbs up. Sure enough, the old man had a vicious eye. This hot and spicy soup really shouldn't be served with white cakes, it should be served with steamed buns. Yumotu is similar to deep-fried dough sticks, only smaller than deep-fried dough sticks, only the length and thickness of fingers. The freshly fried steamed buns are loose and crispy, rolled into the hot and spicy soup, the two complement each other, double the deliciousness. But the steamed bun was too troublesome, it was a small one, and it had to be kneaded and fried, so she gave up. How can you be afraid of trouble? Chen quickly said, she is not afraid of trouble, she is only afraid that the money invested will be in vain. Okay, then make steamed buns. Well, you have to make meat pies too. Zhang Yunzu had her own considerations. The matter seemed to be settled. Today, this pot of soup cannot be wasted. First, Mrs. Chen filled out a large jar and asked Zhang Yunzu to send it to the village head and Mrs. Su. Mrs. Feng is the old woman who rented the house to them. She had delivered pancakes and hot soup to the Zhang family before. Mrs. Chen has always kept it in her heart, and she will naturally reciprocate if she has the opportunity. The rest is reserved for drinking at night, to supplement Zhang Cheng. The two came out of the house and went to the left and right. Needless to say, Mrs. Chen, seeing her bring something, Mrs. Feng immediately warmly greeted her to go in. Knowing that it was not easy for her, the steamed buns happened to be steamed at home. Before leaving, she brought her 5 or 6 steamed buns, which made Mrs. Chen very embarrassed. At the village head's house, Su Qingshan was standing anxiously in the yard. Zhang Cheng had already gone to the mine today, and he wanted to go too, but his cousin wouldn't let him go. At this moment, when he raised his eyes, he happened to see a person standing there holding an earthen pot. Yunzu. Su Qingshan hurried forward and took the crock in her hand. I made some soup, and my mother said to give it to the village chief and Uncle Su to taste. Zhang Yunzu smiled and explained the purpose of coming. Her voice was clear and her smile was shallow when she spoke. Su Qingshan almost forgot to respond. I'll take it to my cousin. Su Qingshan hurriedly carried the crock into the house. After a while, a woman with a kind face came out and greeted Zhang Yunzu enthusiastically. She is Gu Yang's daughter-in-law Lin. Zhang Yunzu answered one by one, and then offered to leave. Su Qingshan sent her to the door. Zhang Yunzu turned her head. Didn't he give her the empty crock in his hand? Su Qingshan was holding the earthen jar, but he was really reluctant to let go. My cousin said that my family has a donkey, and although I don't make as much money as a mine, it's easier and more free. When he said this, he was afraid that Zhang Yunzu might misunderstand, so he hurriedly added, "Actually, I'm not afraid of hard work. I want to go to the mines." He wanted to make some money quickly, build his own house, and then, he didn't dare to look at Zhang Yunzu. Zhang Yunzu was also wondering why there was no sound after he said that he would go to the mine with her father, so it was like this. The village chief is also doing it for your own good. I think he's right. Zhang Yunzu immediately affirmed. It's a pity that her family is poor and can't afford a donkey, otherwise she wouldn't let her father go to the mine. Do you really think it's good to stretch your feet? Su Qingshan's eyes sparkled. Zhang Yunzu nodded. But you don't make much money by pulling your feet. Su Qingshan said anxiously. Less? Zhang Yunzu feels that this business has a bright future. There are so many miners in Wuling County, so why worry about not having a source of tourists by picking a few sections of the road with many people? If there are more people, the price can be lowered, or a monthly subscription can be made. It only costs 40 yuan a month to travel by car, and 30 yuan to live on the mountain. That fool suffers that crime on the mountain. A donkey cart can hold 7 or 8 people, all of whom have a monthly subscription, which is 3 renminbi. If you run twice a day, you can earn as much as going to the mine. This is only sooner or later, at other times, you can also make money. When it grows bigger, you can buy more donkey carts, build more road sections, and be able to deliver goods part-time, and even. Well, Zhang Yunzu thinks too far, but she really thinks this is a good business, otherwise she will have more in the future. Forget the cost, let Zhang Cheng and Su Qingshan partner in this business. She told Su Qingshan a little bit of what she thought of, as a way of repaying him for taking care of him and Father Su on the way to escape from the famine. Su Qingshan was dumbfounded. Can this still happen? But she seemed to have a point. Immediately, he was full of confidence. Yunzu. He thought Zhang Yunzu was really good-looking, and smart. He was about to say something more, but a man came over on the road over there. He was tall and handsome, with long eyebrows and starry eyes. Zhang Yunzu asked himself that he had seen many outstanding people, but he still couldn't help but look at the young man more. He didn't expect that there were such people in this mountain village. Su Qingshan also saw the young man, and immediately greeted him, cousin. The young man showed a warm smile, like Zhu Jianlu and Matsushita Feng. Su Qingshan quickly introduced to the two of them, Zhang Yunzu, who fled with him, and Gu Yanzhou, his cousin. Yanzhou is different from me. He is a scholar. He passed the examination of scholar the year before last, and he will wait for the imperial examination next year. Speaking of Gu Yanzhou, Su Qingshan felt proud. Hearing what he said, Zhang Yunzu felt that the name Gu Yanzhou was a bit familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere. Girl Zhang. Seeing Zhang Yunzu only staring at him, Gu Yanzhou reminded him. Zhang Yunzu regained consciousness, the chaotic thoughts in her mind were cut off immediately, and she couldn't remember where she had heard the name Gu Yanzhou. She greeted him and looked him up and down again. Gu Yanzhou found it strange that she looked at him so generously, so he let her look at him. However, Zhang Yunzu looked away and offered to leave. She was still in a hurry to go home and prepare for business. After 2 days of busy work, I was finally ready. Just after dawn on the 3rd day, the market at the foot of the mountain became lively. At this point, the soldiers stationed in the mine were changing guards, and the laid-off soldiers were already so hungry that their chests were stuck to their backs. The army has breakfast for the soldiers, a large pot of pancakes and a pot of porthin soup with few leaves. Some soldiers go to eat it, and some soldiers want to improve their food, so they come to the foot of the mountain. At this time, some early miners also arrived at the foot of the mountain, and the place was bustling with people. In the northwest corner of the market, you can smell an attractive fragrance from a long distance. That taste hooked people's gluttons out. Walking there, I saw a small stall at the farthest corner of the market. There was a stove in front of the stall. There was a large casserole on the stove. The casserole was gurgling and the strong fragrance came out of there. Seeing someone coming, Zhang Yunzu uncovered the casserole and turned the meat in the casserole with a spoon. I saw a large piece of meat, ruddy in color, trembling in the bright soup. With the turning of the girl's spoon, the thick soup covered the whole piece of meat, which showed that it was full of heat. In the morning of late autumn, my stomach was burning with hunger and my body was full of chills. When I suddenly saw this hot pot of meat, everyone couldn't help swallowing. Someone asked Zhang Yunzu how the meat was sold. This meat is chopped and eaten in pancakes, 6 cents each. Zhang Yunzu said, and lifted the small quilt next to him, revealing half a basket of snow-white wheat-flavored cakes. 6 pennies is a little expensive. You must know that these miners only pay 20 pennies for a day of hard work, and the monthly salary of those soldiers is only 5 pennies. Zhang Yunzu had expected this would be the case, she was just using the smell of meat to attract people here. At the right time, she opened the big wooden barrel next to her, revealing a bucket of steaming hot soup. Immediately, a strong aroma of mutton mixed with various aromas such as pepper rushed to her face. This is bach hen soup, also known as hu la tang. It costs 3 pennies a bowl. Buy a bowl of soup and get 5 steamed buns for free, she said briskly. This is what she decided after discussing with Mr. Chen. It is better to sell soup for 2 pennies than 3 pennies. It is attractive to give oil buns. People always feel that they are taking advantage of the things they give away, but they don't know that the price has already been added to the things they sell. Soup with pepper? I've never heard of it, but the soup is really delicious, and the price is not expensive. Some people stood there and didn't want to leave, so they immediately bought a bowl of soup. The wooden spoon scooped out a spoonful of soup from the wooden bucket, and saw that the soup was actually thick, and it was full of ingredients such as bean curd, vermicelli, and radish. Worth it. When I took a sip of the thick soup into my mouth, the taste of pepper hit my forehead, I just felt refreshed. Spicy, overbearingly spicy, but just right. Not only is it spicy, but the light sour taste is mixed with the aroma of mutton and many other flavors, which makes people feel full of saliva and feel comfortable all over. This is a bowl of soup, and it's not just soup. There is something to chew in your mouth, and there is something to eat. Soak the oil buns in it, full of satiety. While eating, some people praised the soup as delicious. After drinking a bowl of soup, the chills on the body disappeared, and there was faint sweat from the tip of the nose. In such an autumn, such a morning, it seems that such a bowl of soup should be drunk to give people strength. A new day begins. Some people said it was good, and other people who were watching couldn't help but bought a bowl to try it, and they really felt good. Some people also began to buy meat pancakes. It turns out that although the monthly salary of the soldiers here is not high, but guarding such a gold bump in the mine, there is a lot of oil and water, so the soldiers have money in their hands. The main reason is that the smell of the stew is too fragrant. The crispy white cake, served with glutinous and smooth minced meat, and poured with a little bright soup, the aromas of various colors are progressive in the mouth, making people unable to stop eating, straight to the point that the 6 yuan is worth the money up. This taste seems to be better than that of Fumanju in the county. The business at the stall suddenly became prosperous. Mrs. Chen was in charge of serving the soup, Zhang Yunzu cut the meat to make meat pancakes, Zhang Lin and Zhang Yongxiu cleaned up the dishes. It was not time to go to work, Zhang Cheng would go wherever he needed, the family was very busy. The soup, cakes, and even the steamed buns are all made at home. As long as they are served to the guests, the rest is to clean up the dishes. Zhang Yunzu has already thought about everything, so everyone is busy and not chaotic, and they didn't call a guest for a long time. Wait, no one left. More than half an hour passed, and the things were basically sold out. When the mine started to work, Zhang Cheng had already gone to the mine, and the stall became deserted. Everyone seemed to be fighting a tense battle, nervous and excited at the same time. Now that I am free, everyone looks at Zhang Yunzu. How is business today? Although they had feelings, they still wanted to confirm with Zhang Yunzu. Zhang Yunzu took care of collecting the money, and already had a rough estimate. He first stretched out a finger to everyone, and then stretched out a hand, which meant that he sold about 150 wen. Mrs. Chen couldn't believe it at all. Zhang Yunzu had already done calculations with Mr. Chen at home before. These meals were nearly half of the profit. They sold for 150 wen, didn't they make 75 wen? 75 wen a day, how much is a month? 2 taels of silver. Chen felt his face was red and his ears were hot, and he couldn't even breathe freely. Let's go back and continue selling at noon. She didn't feel tired at all at this time, her mind was full of this business, and she completely forgot that she didn't agree with Zhang Yunzu to do this business before. Zhang Yunzu quickly shook her head. The soup needs to be stewed for a long time to be delicious, and the cakes and buns also need time to make. They started preparing yesterday, and they got up before 3 o'clock this morning, so they prepared these things. How can there be time to sell it at noon? Besides, it's not suitable to sell these things at noon. It's too tiring, and now everyone is supported by a wave of energy, and when the energy goes down for a while, they will all be so sleepy that their eyelids will fight. It's only a little past 7 o'clock, and the market is close to Chenchi village. If they pack up their things and go back, they can still get some sleep, Zhang Yunzu thought. Hearing what she said, Mrs. Chen could only give up unwillingly. The family packed up their things and returned home happily. At the gate of Jiang's house, Zhang Wu stood there, looking around the road from time to time. When he saw a few familiar figures, he immediately shouted inside, "Grandfather, Mother and the others are back." With short legs, he rushed towards Chen Shi like a gallop. Chen Shi hugged him, full of joy. When he got to the door, Mr. Chen was already standing there waiting. "How?" he asked. "It's okay," Zhang Yunzu said with a smile. However, Mrs. Chen glanced at her. "What's okay? The business is obviously very good, her daughter is more calm than her now." Thinking of this, she also smiled. When the family entered the house, Zhang Yunzu dumped the pot of money onto the table, spilling a large piece of copper coins, with an indescribably crisp and pleasant voice. Chen seems to have turned into a money fan, and immediately sat at the table and counted the coins one by one. 163 cash, 10 cash more than Zhang Yunzu thought. After deducting the cost, he made a net profit of 80 cash, which was 4 times Zhang Cheng's salary. Chen Shi beamed with joy. After Zhang Yunzu passed the excitement, she really felt that it was okay. On this day, their family, including Mr. Chen, were all helping out. A total of 6 people were busy working, and they only earned 80 wen. Is that much? That is hard money. It was really hard work. I went to bed so late last night, and got up before 3 o'clock this morning. The whole thing turned black and white. She thought, after saving enough capital, she should stop doing this business, otherwise everyone's health would be overwhelmed. However, Chen felt that she was not satisfied. People like them usually have no place to make money, but now they can earn so much, so there is nothing to be dissatisfied with. She told Zhang Yunzu to go to bed quickly, and she prepared things for tomorrow. She was not afraid of hardship or tiredness, as long as she had money to make. Zhang Yunzu asked her to take a rest as well. Money is endless, and health is the most important thing. Otherwise, when she gets sick, the money will not be enough to spend. Only then did Mrs. Chen go back to her room to rest. Lying on the bed, she couldn't sleep. According to today's situation, plus Jiang Cheng's wages, they will have nearly 2 or 3 taels of income every month. She thought of Zhang Yongziu. If she could have made so much money earlier, she would never have sold her. I don't know how she is doing now, and whether there will be a chance to see her again in the future. At this time, Zhang Yongziu finally arrived at the Marquis of Anping, the place she had hoped for. The heads of people killed by Shen Fengming in Chongfeng Mansion are rolling. Everyone in Chongfeng Mansion is in danger, not to mention those officials and wealthy businessmen. Even the brothels and chew houses dare not show off, who would buy girls. Mrs. Zhang didn't dare to sell it anymore, for fear that all those Kylin guards would dislike her, and even her would be clicked. After discussing with acquaintances, she took a few girls to Luzhu. Just in time for the old lady's birthday in the Anping home mansion, there was a lack of people in the mansion, so she immediately brought Zhang Yongziu and a few other girls to the door. In the end, Zhang Yongziu sold it at a price of 12 taels of silver. Today is the first day she entered Anping House Mansion, although she entered through the corner door at the back, but looking at the pavilions, towers and pavilions on the left and right, the majestic and magnificent structures are really more gorgeous than she imagined in her dream. Thinking that Zhang Yunzu lived in this kind of place in her dream, but she lived in a dilapidated house full of wind and rain, she was very lucky, glad that she snatched that short branch. This time it's finally her turn to be rich and prosperous.